Hello, my name is Kate Jones, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about making sure that our school remains FERPA compliant. So first, we should know what is FERPA. FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, and it generally prevents schools from sharing student data without parental consent, though exceptions can be made, usually just in general data like names and birthdays. We'll get to that a little bit later. This was created in 1974, and it defined what can be released, why, and to whom. Updates in the information age have been made to clarify the law, but sometimes it still leaves everything just a little bit hazy. It leads a lot of questions as to how FERPA applies during the modern age and modern education. So, what does FERPA cover? FERPA intends to protect students' educational records. This covers anything pertaining to their grades and discipline reports. And like we mentioned before, not all personal information is protected, like name, address, and general information like that. FERPA can be violated in a number of ways without even realizing it. So, for example, trashing old student records without shredding them. Vendor misuse of information. So, using vendors for the school and then the vendors selling student records. By denying parents the records of their children. This happens with students over the age of 18 who are still technically claimed by their parents. So this is something that that colleges and universities may have to worry about. FERPA protects what is in educational records, and if you witness something, you could speak about it, but if you read it, you may not. So, for example, if a teacher witnesses a fight, that's something that they saw with their eyes, but if an administrator reads the report about the fight, they may not speak about it because they're reading it from the records themselves. The digital age, of course, brings about all new challenges when it comes to privacy, just like it would in a person's everyday life. So, schools are actually not very well protected from ransomware, and this led to an increased chance of data breach, especially since 2019. The other thing would be vendors. So, any student information systems that we are signed up for. We need to make sure that the vendors will protect the student data as well. And that should be in the contract, that we should be able to see that. The same goes for surveillance cameras. Sometimes we have these surveillance cameras, they could be in public places within the schools, but anything with regards to student record must be available to the parent. So if we're going to be using surveillance cameras, in order to enforce disciplinary infractions, then we need to keep that student record and make sure that the parent can see it. And we also cannot forget that there is still an expectation of privacy in many areas. So in bathrooms and locker rooms, we cannot, under any circumstances, use surveillance cameras. In addition, the companies that run the cameras, we need to make sure that we are working with them the same way we would with other vendors to protect student data. In addition, we have to be aware of the correct means of data destruction. This, as we know, once things are out there on the internet, it is hard to get rid of it, but there are ways, and much like paper files must be destroyed, so must digital data. And this should definitely be done done by people who are familiar with the data management system. And there are means of doing this called clearing, purging, and destroying. If you have questions about that, that is something that you should definitely be talking to IT department about. Another way that FERPA may be unintentionally broken would be in the case of immigration or customs enforcement. It is important for us as teachers and administrators to remember that our number one responsibility is to the children, and that all students, regardless of immigration status, are entitled to an education as long as they live within our district. If ICE shows up, they can see directory information. That's what we were talking about, that basic digital information, names, birthdays, addresses. And if they have a subpoena or court order, they may access more. Otherwise, these students are protected under Ferpa, and schools are not required to ask for immigration status, so we do not need to know the immigration status. So in the event that ICE enforcement does come to the school, they would need a subpoena or court order to access any information beyond directory information. Ferpa is an ever-changing and needs to be ever-changing because it can be complicated. What are we protecting? So please keep in mind that this, you should be constantly getting updated training in what Ferpa is. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. Thank you.